back strong versus the Grizz on the road. They moved to 12-4 on the year, and I got Wolves expert Jack Borman to help me break it all down, and it's coming up next on the Locked On Wolves postcast.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Wolves get the dub tonight in Memphis, 119-97. They stay in first place in the Western Conference. What's happening? We're back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Jack Borman. He's on X, at JRBorman13. Jack, before we jump into all the action from tonight, quick reminder, tonight's postcast episode is brought to us by Prize Picks. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, brother, let's just jump right into this one. Wolves come into this one, right? I mean, looking to bounce back from their first home loss versus the Kings. That was Friday night, in which, I mean, the Kings were virtually unstoppable. I had Tyler Metcalf on. I haven't got to talk to you since then, but I mean, they couldn't miss anything. That was just weird, really. And then, that loss, for the most part, it booted the Wolves out of this in-season tournament in all likelihood. But before we get to all that, just give me your big headline from this one, biggest takeaways, top of your head from tonight's win over the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, first of all, great to see you again.
Absolutely. You as well, man.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from this one was just it's super nice to have Mike Conley in a game to really set the tone in one that it probably wasn't going to have a whole lot of energy to it, even though, we know the history between these two teams. And the Wolves generally get up for this one. But I think, not having Ja Morant kind of as a tone setter for what this rivalry, if you want to call it, has become, I think zapped a lot of juice out of it. Not to mention the Grizzlies had 6 additional players beyond Ja Morant that were, rotation guys that were injured and did not play. So, Mike Conley came out right away, set the tone, hit a 3, just was a really, really important, smooth operator in the half court. Got a bunch of guys really good shots, distributed the ball and got the ball to offensive players where they want to attack. Carl got it at the nail before he got into foul trouble, was really effective from there. Did a great job of helping get Rudy Gobert involved early, even though he wasn't quite as much of a factor late. And then it was just awesome in transition. I think the Wolves did a great job of running after stops, and Conley himself, grabbed a few rebounds. I think Conley ended up finishing with 4 rebounds, and I want to say probably all of them. He grabbed it and went and started the transition opportunity, which was fantastic for the Wolves. So, really great Mike Conley game. Pretty low energy game from just about everyone else, but. One other note, too, I think it was great to see Troy Brown knock down a couple of threes. He's been doing pretty much everything the Wolves could ask of him except for making threes, which is obviously something that is a pretty marketed skill of his coming into this season. Is shot above 40% from the corners the last few years. So it was great to see him knock down a couple. Should have had a third. I don't know what the rims in FedEx Forum were greased with before the game, but it was great to see him knock down a couple and see him really kind of build some confidence and hopefully carry that forward as the Wolves push on without Jaden McDaniels here for another 10 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Troy Brown. I want to ask you about him specifically and the bench here in a second, but hey, don't lie. How worried were you when they cut that lead to 12 with like 6 to play? Because I'm sure every Wolves fan still has some PTSD and is just kind of hardwired now at this point to assume the worst in those types of situations from what we saw last year. But that's always a sign of a great team, though, isn't it? Being able to put away teams and step on the throat late.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it was Mike Conley, right? Yeah. Nikhil obviously hit a 3, which was big. But then Mike came and hit that second 3, which was followed by an awesome call from Michael Grady, where he said, "Bite, might be night," to kind of stomp out the embers of that comeback, which was fantastic. But yeah, I think we've seen that from the Timberwolves so far this season, right? You think back to the game against Golden State where they had those 3 guys, their big 3 out, and the Timberwolves kind of had to come back against an inferior opponent, same business in New Orleans. And now again tonight, they've taken care of business against teams that they should. should beat. And it's been really refreshing to, especially see them kind of ward off these, these late comeback attempts when teams try to make the game a little bit closer than what it really is. I think this team just is so strong defensively that when they really buy in and lock in and stay focused out on that end of the floor, they're a really tough team to score on, especially when your team is down some offensive options that can space the floor like Memphis is. So yeah, certainly a great thing. And to be brutally honest with you, I haven't really thought too much about those comebacks. I think it's kind of hard to, especially in a game like this where, Memphis just doesn't really have that many guys. Maybe if they were playing a team that was fully loaded, you'd think about that
for
a little
sure.
Bit more, but
Yeah. No, well said. Absolutely. Yeah. I think as this season continues to roll on, maybe again, some fans are starting to forget the past a little bit and realize, hey, this is a brand new season. Hit the reset button, brand new team. Let's give them a chance. And certainly that's paid off big time through these first 15 games. And again, Friday, the Wolves got toasted by Sacramento on the 3-ball. Tonight, for about 3.5 quarters anyways, if you check the stat sheet at any point in the game, it was all Wolves. I mean, they ended the night shooting 44% from three. Gray shot less than 27%. But that was the big difference in this one. And again, up until the last, 6, 7, 8 minutes, it was even more lopsided than that. Everything else on the stat sheet tonight was pretty much even. I mean, points in the paint, fast break points, turnovers, you name it. It was all pretty much square, except, again, the Wolves shooting percentage from both beyond the arc and inside. I mean, they handled the Grizz, man. I mean, pretty much start to finish. Not pretty much, literally from start to finish, they never let up. They never trailed in this one. They were into basically total control from the opening tip-off. You talked about Mike Conley a little bit more, and again, you mentioned it. I just want to echo it. He really felt like the glue tonight, especially when Kat and Rudy and At kind of picked up some early bad fouls in this one, but between the 3-ball and the assists, bite, as they call him, I mean, he was surgical. I asked Tyler the other night, it feels like they still need a third scorer, and it is a game like this, does that make you feel like maybe Mike Conley could be that third scorer that the Wolves kind of need?
Yeah, I wish my friend Jared Martinson were here. He's got a stat of when I think Mike Conley scores at least 10 or 11 points. I want to say the Timberwolves have a winning percentage north of 80%.
Wow.
And the thing with Mike Conley is he's just so, important and consistent as a distributor, and is a guy that is one of those really important kind of low usage, high impact players to be able to place around two pretty high usage, high impact stars, and Ant and Cat. That he hasn't really been asked to be more assertive as a scorer, but when he is, the Timberwolves are really successful and they're really tough to beat. I mean, even when they were shorthanded down the stretch of last season, you think about that Pelicans game when Jaden breaks his hand and Rudy gets sent home before the halftime. He was awesome in that game. He was great in the game against Oklahoma City. He was awesome in that second playing game against the Lakers. This team goes kind of as Mike Conley goes in a sense as a scorer some nights. And tonight was one of those nights where, I think you really kind of have to push Mike Conley into being that scorer. I think he really wants to be a scorer, especially when he's, in an open catch and shoot 3-point scenarios like he was tonight. I want to say he's shooting damn near 50% on catch and shoot threes so far this season. And so I think that Mike can be, once Jaden McDaniels gets back, I think, you want to be able to have him be the guy just because he's got more of that, break you down off the dribble, kind of get to your spot and score. It can be kind of be, a mismatch weapon. And you'd want to see Naz Reid be able to be that guy too. We haven't really seen a whole lot from Naz since he really exploded those first, 5 or 6 games of the season. And so I think, trying to find a way to get him going as a scorer again is going to be really important because as much as Mike can do it, and it's great when he does, I think that you want to really keep his focus as a playmaker and as a playmaker first, a scorer second. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting storyline to follow for sure, especially because I think, as you get down later in the stretch of the season, potentially into the playoffs, when these teams pick their matchups, and kind of who they want to hide a poor defender on. That's what I think the Timberwolves are going to look to exploit, whether it's Mike Conley breaking someone down or Jaden McDaniels breaking someone down or Naz Reid getting in the post. those types of things. So I think it's going to be matchup dependent. It's unfortunate, I guess, a little bit that you don't have that consistent guy you can always look to be that third guy. But, hopefully it's a situation where not forcing it to a third guy will be kind of advantageous to the Timberwolves, and that they kind of do what the matchup asks of them, so that they can kind of, keep some more offensive flow and rhythm that follows the game plan, rather than, trying to square peg a round hole with that third scoring role, if that makes sense.
That's actually a really good point, though, too. I mean, at that point, it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Again, you play it kind of night in, night out, pending the matchup. So I like what you said there. Good breakdown. And I got to ask you, too, what's with Bite, by the way? I mean, do we have an origin story yet? Because up until this year, I've never heard anyone call Michael Conley Bite.
Yeah, no, that's just Anthony Edwards being Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
The origin story came, Ant was in the locker room, called him Bite. We asked him what the origin of that was. He explained that Mike Conley looks like a guy who, if he ever got in a fight, that he would just bite someone. Like Mike Tyson was what Ant said. And so he started calling him Bite. And so I think that's kind of stuck just as a joke because of how much, Mike doesn't like it. And I think Mike just kind of rolls his eyes and laughs and smiles and goes along with it because he's a great guy. And he knows that it's something that Ant loves poking fun at him for. So he just kind of lets it happen. But I was actually at the Timberwolves. I was up in the stands on whatever night that was on when they played. Who did they play? I think it was Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Sixers?
The Sixers, yes, thank you. There was a guy in the stands right near me who had a custom number 10 Wolves Bite jersey.
Stop it. Already?
Which was
already.
Yeah, I dapped him up. Great
to.
jersey. It was pretty funny.
That's hilarious.
It's fun that's sticking a little bit.
Man, yeah, I love this team, man. I love Ant, just his personality, his competitiveness, the whole thing. But when you hear stories like that, though, too, it just kind of adds to the whole aura of Ant as well. I'm so glad that's stuck, too. I'm sure Conley just hates it, too, which is just kind of hilarious as well. You mentioned the bench tonight. You got Shake Milton. He hit an early three. We're still kind of hoping he can get some confidence going. You mentioned Troy Brown. He hit 2 big threes early in the game. And then, Naz and Kyle, they're always solid and consistent. But what'd you see from the rest of the bench tonight as we, kind of continue to get some more run with some of these guys without Jaden McDaniels on the court?
Yeah. I think, I really liked, like I said, from Troy Brown. He's been a really good energy guy. Obviously spaces the floor from the corners. Has also been a pretty effective corner crasher from the 3-point line out in the corner there, which is, a pretty big point of emphasis for certain NBA offenses, especially if you're going against a smaller team that's going to struggle on the glass. And, obviously it's important that the Wolves have the target centers, the twin towers, the northern heights, whatever you want to call them. But, trying to get one of those guys back in transition and corner crashing with one of those bigs, I think is a better strategy. And it's worked out better for the Timberwolves, both in transition defense and on the offensive glass. So I think, Troy Brown has a lot of value there. I think Shake Milton used his length pretty well defensively tonight, which was important. He's got a really long wingspan. He's like 6'5", but he's got almost a 7-foot wingspan, which makes him a really effective shot contester. He does a good job of kind of, staying in the weeds and playing in the gaps, if you will, defensively, to make those passes that are one pass away a lot more difficult. But he can also then, rely on that length to be kind of, a late contester, if you will, which is effective, especially on 3-point shooters and in situations where you don't want to foul a jump shooter. He can just kind of be further away from the defender, doesn't have to jump at the defender quite as much, which is helpful. And I think that's a huge reason why the Timberwolves, have been a really good 3-point defensive team, is they have so much length and are really good contesting. And then, I know he only played for 2 minutes. All right.
Okay.
But I'm really excited about Leonard Miller.
I was going to ask you about him and Wendell Moore was brought up.
And it's not just because it's his birthday. I'm not just shouting him out because it's his birthday, but just the fluidity that he has at 6'10", 6'11", his passing instincts are awesome. And I think he can be a really effective driver. He's got some good touch around the rim, and he shot the ball pretty well from 3. with a pretty quick release, honestly, that looks much improved from last season while playing down in the G League for the Iowa Wolves. I think he's just got to clean up his handle a little bit, but made a couple of fun plays in the 2 minutes that he was out there. And then I think Kyle Anderson too, just to wrap up with the bench, was awesome in that second quarter. He kind of quarterbacked a really intriguing stretch there that was fun to watch. He was playing out there with Milton, Brown Jr., Reed, and Towns there at the start of the second quarter. That lineup was +7 on the first 3:30 or so. Was just setting everyone up, getting the guys a bunch of good open looks for guys in spots where they like to attack from. That was something that I said Mike Conley did early in the first quarter, and Kyle Anderson did it in the second quarter, which is great. So, I've seen his name kind of thrown around as like a trade chip with some Wolves fans online, in the last week or two, especially when you consider some of the intrigue that a guy like Leonard Miller has. But man, when that offense gets sticky and when, things kind of get bogged down and you just kind of start looking around like, all right, who's going to kind of grab this game by the horns and make some plays and make some things happen to get the train back on the tracks. A lot of times it often ends up being Kyle Anderson when he's on the floor. And I think the Wolves would really miss that if they tried to use him as a trade chip for, maybe a scoring guard or something like that. So just another game where he really proved his value and was really important in the Timberwolves blowing this thing open.
Last quick one about Miller, because I asked Tyler this too. I saw before the Sixers game, saw they called up Miller and Wendell Moore, but I asked Tyler this, and I'm such a NFL draft nerd. I really geek out about the younger guys in the league and the draft picks and all that. Sounds like you're high on Leonard Miller as well as Tyler was as well. I mean, he got me all jacked up about Leonard Miller, but do you got like a comp for him yet? Or does his playing style remind you of anybody as far as maybe just kind of playing style, I guess, maybe 2-3 years down the road, fans could kind of look forward to once he hits, hopefully, his ceiling at some point?
Yeah, and Tyler's kind of like you, where he's all over the NBA draft. And he awesome
loves it
with that.
Yeah.
And Leonard Miller was a consensus first-round pick. Pretty much anywhere you looked pre-draft, and the Timberwolves got him, I want to say at 33.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I need to look that up. I can't remember the exact number. But they got him too with picks in that Mike Conley trade. So that trade essentially became Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Leonard Miller for D'Lo, which was a heist. But yeah, I mean, back to Leonard Miller. I think, if you want to look at a left-handed guy, I think Lamar Odom makes a lot of sense as kind of a point forward at that, 6'10", 6'11". Is a good athlete in his prime, has really good passing instincts, can shoot it. I think Lamar Odom was a better shooter and probably, a little bit better off the dribble in terms of creating his own shot. But in terms of just be able to create mismatches as a good passer and finisher with a lot of length at that 4 spot, I think, he's a guy that makes sense and jumps out to me. I think there's a lot of guys in the league now that are at that 4, that playmaking 4 spot. We see what Kyle Anderson can do here in Minnesota. And so it's fun that, Leonard Miller is going to be able to learn from a guy like Slow-Mo, and how to be able to use passing at his size to be such a weapon and create for other people, and get in the lane and be able to crash. But then also, when things bog down, you lose your dribble in the middle of the lane, still be able to elevate over guys. We see Slow-Mo do that all the time if a pass isn't there. So it's going to be really fun to see him develop, and and hopefully, we may see some rotation minutes from him later in the season, depending if, they're not able to, get really consistent production from Shake Milton or Troy Brown.
And I'm going to revert it back to the NFL, man, but I just think about, because you brought up a great point about Slow-Mo kind of taking Leonard Miller maybe under his wing a little bit and kind of molding him a little bit, just being that wily veteran in the locker room, off the court, things like that. It's like you think about, okay, Adam Thielen, he kind of helped Stephon Diggs and JJ, and now you got JJ kind of taking Jordan Addison under his wing as well. So, yeah, if they could get anything from either one of those guys, that would be just such gravy on top of this roster right now. But like you said, I think more of a project still. Great that he actually got on the court for 2 minutes tonight, but something that we should probably pump the brakes, reevaluate next season, but we'll see. I was going to say,
just really quick, I mean, I think Leonard Miller would be ready to play, in a team's maybe on the back end of a team's rotation, but it's just the Timberwolves are so deep and have so many veterans that are ready to contribute right now. I think, if you put a Leonard Miller on a team like, the Grizzlies or the Rockets or, the Spurs even, or teams like that are kind of reloading or need help on the wing, need size in the wing. Like, I think you would play for a lot of teams. It's just the Timberwolves, the way they're set up, they just don't have the minutes available.
That's awfully fun to think about, though, right now, too, just knowing that the raw talent is there, that, like you said, maybe an injury to, of course, you hope that's not the case, knock on wood, but, if needed, he could be called upon, which is, that's pretty fun and exciting to think about. I want to ask you a little bit more about the Wolves defense, and I know we've dived into that quite a bit, but first, I got a quick word from Prize Picks. Quick reminder, tonight's postcast was brought to us by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it's without a doubt the most fun I've had playing daily fantasy because you can win up to 25 times your money this football season. Why I love it, it's so easy to play. All you got to do is select 2 or more players, pick more or less than their projected stats on any given night. And now you can cross sports and pick multiple players in different sports altogether. That's just one of the reasons why Prize Picks is the funnest way to play daily fantasy. Plus, and you know this, Jack, Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. And with the Prize Picks reboot policy, your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if in any NFL game or college football matchup, if your player gets hurt in the first half, let's say, and doesn't return, that player gets rebooted on your bet slip. How great is that? That makes Prize Picks the only daily fantasy platform around that offers you injury insurance to give you that extra peace of mind. Right now, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LockedOnNBA at prizepicks.com/LockedOn for a 100% bonus match up to $100. One more time, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA for a 100% bonus match today. We've talked about this defense a ton, as we should. They're just red hot right now. But I want to ask you about assistant coach Elston Turner for a minute, because how much do you think, just your 2 cents, he's had to do with the defensive turnaround this year? Because I know it sounds like he kind of runs things on that end of the floor. So I just want your 2 cents on him, what his role is and kind of the job he's done this year.
Yeah, he's, just how you have it in football. He's your defensive coordinator. Chris Finch said last week or 2 weeks ago, during a post-game media availability, that the Timberwolves staff is constructed in a way very similar to football, where you have an offensive coordinator. He kind of is that role. You have Mike Inori, kind of helps put rotations together as kind of your associate head coach, kind of that, senior advisor to the head coach role, if you will. And then you have ET as a defensive coordinator, and all these guys really respect Elston Turner. And that's the thing straight away. That's really important. I can't remember which game it was, but Anthony Edwards said after a game where they came out really flat and just said, man, ET cussed us out and was screaming at us in the locker room. And he's always super chill and never does that. So we had to turn it around for him. And, I think that speaks to the fact that, he's a guy that doesn't need to, scream and yell to get his point across, in that, I think his MO and his kind of standard operating state is, just a really calm dude that, is really cerebral, sees the game, with a lot of experience. And that's really important for a team that, hasn't had a whole lot of experience playing a bunch of different concepts of defense. Like when you think 2 years ago, Timberwolves played a high wall defense where the big defender was really up at the level of the screen. They didn't play a lot of zone. And now this year they're playing a lot more drop coverage. Where the big defending the screen is kind of sinking down into the paint, and guys in the corners are staying home on shooters. They're switching more, which is important because they have all this length and versatility. And they are playing some zone too. When they have some longer personnel with Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, which has worked really, really well. And I think Turner's done an awesome job of kind of picking and choosing his spots of where he wants to tinker, where he wants to throw a zone in against a team that might have a second unit that doesn't really shoot it very well. Like he kind of plans all this out. Like, all right, let's project what this other team's rotation is going to look like, who might be on the floor at what points of the game, how they might match up with certain guys we might have on the floor at that point of the game. And then, this is going to be our first look of defense. If that doesn't work, we're going to have a second one ready to go. And I think that the Timberwolves haven't been afraid to go to a defense, to switch away from a defense, which has been really important. And I think, your ability to kind of toggle defenses like that is really important in the playoffs, especially when, you're just looking to steal 2, 3, 4 possessions at a time. And obviously you're going to see a team, potentially 7 times. And so there's going to be a lot of diving into the film, diving into numbers. Where can we, get the slightest little mismatch and predict, what teams or how a team might change its rotation. And like you said, or like I said, like getting back to those matchups of projecting what 10 guys are going to be on the floor and how, we can build a defense that's going to, defend those 5 guys best. So, it's been really fun to watch. And, like I said, you feel like you have so much more control over the game when you're able to control it defensively, because you can always bring attitude, energy, effort, being locked in on that end of the floor, no matter if shots are falling or not. And that's been a huge reason why the Timberwolves are, what are they, 12-4 now, which I think is the best 16 game start in team history. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of that credit goes to Elston Turner and using the pieces on the chessboard in a great way. So,
great breakdown right there. Learned a lot from that. And again, I revert everything back to the NFL. And in the NFL, if you got a red hot assistant coach, odds are they're going to be in the running for a head coaching job at some point down the line. Is it kind of similar in the NBA at all? I mean, do you think they could lose Elston at some point if the defense stays this hot? Because I know Minnesota fans don't want to lose Brian Flores and Elston anytime soon. I know that.
I'd be really surprised considering that Elston Turner, I want to say, is 64, 65 years old. It's not common that a guy would get a first head coaching look at that age. Mm-hmm. If it happened, great for Elston. But, I think some of these guys are more than happy to be coordinators and be awesome at what they do at this stage in their career. And ET certainly, could be one of those guys. I'm honestly not sure, but it's pretty rare for a head coach to get a look for the first time at age 64.
Okay, so we don't have to. Just Flores is the only one Minnesota fans have to worry about next offseason. Hey, you mentioned more drop coverage, and you kind of touched on it. I know that's where Rudy excelled in Utah, and then you got the high wall scheme. They played a little bit more last year and years previous. Can you break it down in layman's terms, just that high wall? Just 30 seconds, your elevator pitch, just so we kind of know what we're looking at or what we should watch for, I guess, when we sit down and watch the T-Wolves kind of D up.
Exactly. So it all depends on pick and roll is obviously the most simple and most common, play we see in the NBA. So when a big man comes to set a screen for a guard or for the ball handler, you basically have to look at what the guy who is defending the big man setting the screen does. If the guy who is defending the big man kind of stays, right attached to him and is, up at the level of the screen, a lot of times that's a high wall defensive concept, especially if the if that big defender stays up there after the big man is done screening and he stays up there to try to, force the ball to stay on the perimeter. And then once the guard makes that pass, the big man defender will then get back to the big man in the paint. So we saw that a lot versus Memphis. It's much more common against really quick athletic guards to try to, force the ball out of their hands so they don't get this runway into the paint against drop coverage. And that's what we saw. That's what we saw against Sacramento, where the Timberwolves are playing that drop coverage and there wasn't anyone up there to make De'Aaron Fox go east to west. And he had that runway to the paint. And then obviously with drop coverage, that big man is kind of backpedaling into the paint when the big man is setting the screen, anticipating that guard to come around the screen. So it's great for, forcing teams into mid-range shots if they don't have a great mid-range shooting guard. But that high wall coverage, again, probably would have been something they could have turned to against a guy like Fox.
Yeah. And I heard Coach Finch say it this week that kind of the back and forth last year between the two styles was kind of a major reason why they struggled last year. And not because of Rudy or Cat or Ant, but because everyone else around them kind of struggled to keep up. It was like, okay, I'm coming in cold off the bench and all of a sudden my head's kind of spinning trying to keep up. And so I hear something like that. And then I think back to last year's season, just again, filled with so many second half collapses. I mean, do you think that could have been one of the big reasons why we did see so many second half debacles last year? Because I know there's a lot of reasons. It's not just one thing for their turnaround, but I just wonder if that's coming into play with the big difference from last year to this year's defense.
Yeah, I think it's certainly part of it. I think another part of it too is the Timberwolves just didn't really have much practice time.
Yeah. Good point.
They had a full training camp. They didn't really have a full training camp last year. When you consider the fact that Gobert was hurt and didn't practice much, Ant was overweight, and Karl Anthony Towns was really sick, so they didn't have a lot of practice time. Then Karl gets hurt. They're trying to practice and figure this stuff on the fly in the first 20 games, and you kind of have to throw it out with different personnel. And they had a full healthy training camp with everyone able, ready to go. That the team was pretty much the same with the exception of the last man in the rotation this year. So they're able to talk about those types of things over the summer. The terms that you're going to use defensively were all the same as what they were last year. So you have more familiarity with those types of things. But then again, it's just another year of being able to play with Rudy Gobert, right? Like Rudy Gobert is the center of the universe for this Timberwolves defense, no matter what they're playing. And everyone else pretty much follows Rudy's lead and got used to his communication and kind of how to play with him, where to be on the floor when he's out there, depending on the coverage and all that good stuff. So, even though I think last season was kind of a lost season in that regard, I think they did, pick up some of those things when you think about terms, you think about how to play with someone like Rudy Gobert, especially in drop coverage, those types of things. So,
yeah, well, again, whatever they're doing, obviously it's working. I mean, I know these rankings change pretty much every night, but for the most part, you're talking about the best overall defense in the league and top 5, if not top 3 in multiple categories from the floor and from 3, shooting percentage, all that stuff. I'd like to pick your brain more about some of the analytics and do a little bit more of a deep dive into the defensive statistics. Maybe some other night, maybe Tuesday after, or whenever you're on next. I think Tyler's on with me on Tuesday, but you're right, man. It's all good right now with the assistant coach, Elson Turner, and the job he's doing. And it's just been really fun to watch this drastic turnaround from last year to this year. A couple more quickies to close. I got 2 more for you right after a quick word from FanDuel. Quick reminder, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers, you're getting $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line wager. That means all you got to do is find the best money line bet you like. You wager $5, you win that bet, you're getting $150 in bonus bets back. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on all the action. The app, it's so easy to use. And they got everything you need. Money lines, parlays, prop bets, you name it, they got it. FanDuel's got everything you need to bet on the entire NBA season. And it's by far the easiest and simplest betting app to use. So go check it out for yourself. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon today. America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. All right, last couple before we wrap up, get out of here. Wolves' last regular season in-season tournament game. That comes Tuesday versus the Thunder. That game's at home, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more clarity around the entire situation once we get there. Still a lot of basketball left to be played. But as of now, even if the Wolves beat the Thunder, they'll need help from the Warriors, and because of point differential, they'll need a lot of help and then some as it stands now here tonight. So basically, Warriors need to win. They need to win by a lot. Wolves need to win. They need to win by a lot. And if that doesn't work out, then their next best bet is the wild card. But again, because of the point differential, sounds like they're definitely on the outside looking in, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's kind of a, it's kind of a funny situation of, so you're saying there's a chance, right? Where,
right.
For all intents and purposes, they're eliminated. I think the recipe is for Golden State to beat the Kings by 12 or 13, and then the Timberwolves to beat the Thunder by at least 20. I think is I have to look at the numbers to give you an exact answer, but that's what you're hoping for. But nothing else matters if you don't blow out the Thunder. So I think that the Timberwolves probably aren't going to try to run up the score and make that game a crazy game, considering that I think that Kings Warriors game will take place after that Timberwolves game is done pretty much. So I think all you can do is just try to take care of business. And the last thing I guess you'd want to is to have an injury because you're trying to run the score up in the fourth quarter too. And the Timberwolves can't afford that right now.
No, that's a good point. Well said. Well done tonight. As always, love picking your brain about this stuff. Wolves bounce back strong versus the Grizzlies tonight. They moved to 12-4 on the season with tonight's 119-97 victory. As always, huge shout out to everyone who joined us on tonight's postcast. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game, same time, same place, right here to break it all down. Quick reminder as well, go check out all Jack's work on Twitter at JRBorman13. That's going to do it for us tonight, though. Next on deck, it's the Thunder this Tuesday, tip-off, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, join us right here for the entire recap. And follow all our work over on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. And one more plug, last one, I swear. If you haven't already, go check out Ben Beacon over on the Locked On Wolves podcast as well. He's Jack Borman. I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Until next time, signing out.